Putin is planning to go to space. However, not to fly there, but to stage yet another nuclear provocation. At least that's where things seem to be heading. So Putin's annual press conference is literally a treasure trove of memes and bizarre statements against the backdrop of uncomfortable questions. And that's exactly what happened this year as well. For the most part, the press conference looked like a nostalgic gathering or a memorial evening for a Soviet actor. They congratulated relatives on their birthdays, joked, applauded, and then congratulated someone else again. However, the episode that stood out for its peculiarity was when Putin demonstrated deep knowledge on an intergalactic issue. It is likely that this question, of course, like all the others, was prepared in advance, as is often done at press conferences of presidents, and especially at Putin's presidential conference, because otherwise it's rather difficult to explain such deep immersion in the topic. And why would a viewer from Tyumen ask a question not about the improvement of Tyumen, not about how they will live tomorrow or how all of Russia will live, but about an unknown cosmic object? What would Putin say about other galaxies and how, who would doubt it, could this be connected to explosions? Blogger, hi everyone, my name is Anastasiia Husarieva. Now I'll tell you about the latest blunders of the Kremlin dictator and also about the plans that he is obviously going to implement in the near future. In the meantime, please leave a like, write a comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And I'll get started. Blogger. So during a live Q&A session, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, answered a question about the artificial nature of Object 31 Atlas, which, according to astronomers, is passing close to Earth. The question was asked by Christina from Tyumen. She asked whether there are any signs of artificial origin of the object and whether humanity should prepare for possible contact if these are visitors from space, in other words, aliens. Responding to these assumptions, Putin stated that the object poses no threat and does not have an artificial origin. According to him, it is a comet, and Russian scientists have complete information about what is happening. The president noted that the object has an extragalactic origin and differs in several characteristics from comets of the solar system. In particular, he mentioned the peculiarities of the object's shell composition and the processes occurring on its surface as it approaches the sun. Well, it's a comet. Our scientists know what is happening there. Moreover, it's a comet from another galaxy, Putin stated. He clarified that the object is several kilometers in size and its distance is hundreds of millions of kilometers away, which completely rules out any danger to Earth. According to him, at the beginning of next year, the comet will leave the boundaries of the solar system. Blogger. The Comet 31 Atlas, or 3I Atlas, was discovered on July 1st, 2025 by the telescopes of the Atlas system, which is designed to search for potentially dangerous asteroids and comets. The Minor Planet Center confirmed its interstellar origin and assigned the object an official designation. It is also known as A11PL3Z. The object's age is estimated to be about 7 billion years, which makes it older than the solar system. The diameter of the comet is about 20 kilometers. And so, on December 19th, the day of the direct line with the head of state, 31 Atlas passed at its closest distance to Earth. At the moment of closest approach, it was at a distance of 268,918,000 kilometers from our planet. According to experts, these parameters completely rule out any risk to Earth. Well, at first glance, it might seem that the topic could be considered closed at this point. However, a few days before the direct line, Vladimir Putin had already spoken about possible threats related to space. But in that case, he was referring to a completely different context. He stated that talk of an allegedly inevitable collision between Europe and Russia is, in his words, a lie and nonsense. Putin accused NATO countries of building up their armaments and at the same time emphasized the capabilities of Russia's nuclear forces. Blogger. According to Putin, European societies are being deliberately instilled with fears about an impending major war and an inevitable conflict with Russia. He emphasized that such statements do not correspond to reality. At the same time, the Russian dictator accused NATO countries of deploying new types of weapons, including systems intended for placement in outer space, as well as increasing their offensive capabilities. In the same speech, Putin stated that Russia's nuclear shield is more advanced than that of any other official nuclear state. He noted that, according to him, 92% of Russia's nuclear forces consist of modern weapon models. He also listed a number of systems mentioning the Avangard, Burevestnik, and other developments, and also spoke about the growth and strengthening of the ground forces. The topic of possible nuclear explosions in space has already been discussed more than once. Back in 2023, it caused a wide public outcry after statements made by RT's editor-in-chief, Margarita Simonyan. In one of the broadcasts, she said and suggested carrying out a thermonuclear explosion over Siberia, claiming that this would supposedly disable satellites and communication systems without causing serious harm to the Earth. She stated verbatim that during an explosion at an altitude of hundreds of kilometers above their own territory, nothing terrible would happen on Earth. According to her, as a result, all radio electronics would allegedly be disabled, including satellites, cameras, phones, computers, and the world would return to the level of communications of the early 1990s. These words, of course, provoked a sharp reaction in society. President Putin's press secretary Peskov later stated that Margarita Simonyan does not work in government bodies and does not represent the official position of the Kremlin. Nevertheless, the discussion continued. The mayor of Novosibirsk, Siberia's the mayor of Novosibirsk, that is a potential victim of Simonyan's proposals, Anatoly Lokot, who has a background in physics, published a statement refuting such claims, pointing out that above-ground thermonuclear explosions have extremely serious consequences despite Simonyan's assertions. According to him, the radioactive elements produced as a result of such explosions can affect the environment for hundreds and in some cases even thousands of years. Andrei Ozarovsky, an engineer-physicist with the Radioactive Waste Safety Program, stated in a comment to the RTV channel that a thermonuclear explosion over Siberia would not disable electronics in Europe and the United States of America. According to him, although the environmental consequences will not be catastrophic, they will affect truly vast areas. He emphasized that first and foremost, unprotected household appliances would suffer, whereas military electronics are initially designed to operate under electromagnetic pulse conditions. Ozarsky also explained that when a nuclear device is detonated in space, the radioactive contamination of the Earth will be less than during an atmospheric explosion, but the negative consequences will still affect vast areas. The contamination will be dispersed, but it will not be possible to avoid it completely. And although Simonian is indeed not an official, her closeness to the authorities has caused concern among part of society. Putin's awareness of issues related to space has also drawn additional attention. Previously, similar concerns were expressed by NATO in April 2025. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stated that NATO is concerned about the possibility of future wars in space and the potential use of nuclear weapons by Russia against satellites. He noted that the alliance is aware of reports that Russia is considering the possibility of deploying nuclear weapons in outer space. According to Mark Rutte, Russia's current capabilities in space lag behind those of the West, and that is why the development of nuclear anti-satellite weapons may be seen as a way to strengthen their capabilities. He emphasized that such actions would constitute a violation of the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. He also reported that NATO countries are preparing for new challenges, exchanging intelligence data, creating national space commands, and developing more secure and maneuverable satellites. The seriousness of the issue is confirmed by a number of publications in Western media. In 2024, the Wall Street Journal reported that a few weeks before the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia launched the spacecraft Kosmos 2553 into space. The satellite was placed into orbit on February 5, 2022, and according to the publication, it may have been intended for testing components of a potential nuclear anti-satellite weapon system. Russia claims that the device is used for scientific purposes. However, American officials believe that it is connected to the development of anti-satellite technologies. At the same time, it is noted that the satellite itself does not carry a nuclear charge but contains only non-nuclear components. According to experts' estimates, if such a weapon were deployed, Russia would theoretically gain the ability to destroy hundreds of satellites in low Earth orbit using a nuclear explosion. Sources of the Wall Street Journal note that the United States has been aware of Russia's interest in developing a nuclear anti-satellite capability for many years, but only recently have they been able to more accurately assess the progress of this program. Some of the publication's sources refer to Kosmos 2553 as a prototype of such a weapon, while others believe that the program has not advanced that far. And so, discussions about a comet that is hundreds of millions of kilometers away from our Earth and poses no threat to humanity have become a trigger for truly alarming topics. Undoubtedly, one could treat such news with disdain. They say Putin is always making strange statements, doesn't really take responsibility for his words, and for the past 11 years, Russia has been scaring the world by calculating how many minutes it would take to strike Brussels, London, Washington, and so on. However, knowing the symbolism that Putin likes, such conversations, especially unexpected ones, about an intergalactic comet, a nuclear shield, and so on, can provoke, if not anxiety, then at least a sense of caution. Will Russia use or could it use a nuclear explosion in space? At the moment, the Kremlin has no such necessity. And as long as behind-the-scenes diplomatic negotiations continue, an explosion is unlikely, since it would provoke a very sharp reaction from the United States, and probably from the entire world. As we have seen, Trump reacts very easily and very actively, and sometimes radically changes his position. However, if these negotiations fail, the war will continue, escalate to new levels, and with greater escalation up to the threat of a third world war. Of course, Russia as a state is capable of the most radical and, frankly speaking, cynical measures, and may resort to such practices. But these are just assumptions and speculations. We, for our part, hope that the world, together with Ukraine, will be able to stop both Russia and the Russian dictator so that all of this does not turn into a third, and this time, nuclear world war. Thank you for being with us. Be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and write a comment. What do you think? Will it come to the point where Putin starts threatening the world, not just with nuclear weapons, but with nuclear explosions in space? And we'll see you in the next broadcasts. Name Anastasiia Husarieva. Take care and wash your hands. Bye.